The sun shone brightly on the morning of Nicholas's 60th birthday, casting a warm glow over the urban neighborhood where he had spent most of his life. Nicholas, a kind-hearted and humble man, was just waking up. He stretched his arms, feeling the familiar ache in his joints, a reminder of the years he had spent working as an accountant. Despite the challenges and the ups and downs, he found comfort in the routine and predictability of his life. Nicholas had always been a man of modest means, living in a cozy, two-story house with his wife, Jane. She was the ambitious one in the relationship, a corporate executive with a sharp mind and a sharper tongue. Nicholas admired Jane's drive and determination, often marveling at how she effortlessly climbed the corporate ladder while he remained content with his steady job. He supported her wholeheartedly, attending her company events and celebrating her successes as if they were his own. In the quiet moments of the morning, as Nicholas sipped his coffee, he reflected on his life and the significance of reaching his 60th birthday. He thought about his childhood, growing up in a small town where he learned the value of hard work and honesty from his parents. Those lessons had guided him throughout his life, shaping him into the man he was today. He thought about his marriage, which had been a journey filled with both joy and challenges, and how he had always strived to be a good husband to Jane. Nicholas was not a man given to introspection, but on this milestone birthday, he couldn't help but ponder what the future held for him. He had dreams of traveling, of seeing places he had only read about in books, and he hoped Jane would share in these adventures with him. He wanted to spend more time with their grandchildren, passing on the wisdom he had accumulated over the years. Above all, he hoped for continued happiness in his marriage, a partnership he believed to be as strong as ever. The day unfolded with a quiet sense of anticipation. Jane had planned a party for him, inviting close friends and family to their home to celebrate. Nicholas was grateful for her efforts, knowing how busy she was with work. The house was buzzing with activity as Jane coordinated the final details, ensuring everything was perfect for the evening's festivities. She was in her element, commanding the room with her presence and organizing everything with precision. Nicholas watched her from the sidelines, feeling a swell of pride. Jane had always been the vibrant force in their relationship, and he loved her for it. He admired her ability to juggle so many responsibilities, all while maintaining her poise and elegance. He couldn't wait to see the surprise she had hinted at, something she promised would make his birthday unforgettable. As guests began to arrive, the house filled with laughter and the sound of clinking glasses. Nicholas mingled with friends he hadn't seen in years, catching up on their lives and sharing stories from the past. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had gathered to celebrate with him, each one playing a part in the tapestry of his life. The evening wore on, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the sky, Nicholas felt a warmth in his heart. The party was everything he could have hoped for, a testament to the life he had built with Jane. He watched her move gracefully through the crowd, the perfect hostess, and felt a profound appreciation for the woman he had married. The music played softly in the background as Nicholas made his way to the kitchen to grab more drinks. As he passed through the hallway, he paused for a moment, savoring the sounds of joy and celebration emanating from the living room. It was a perfect evening, a reflection of a life well lived, and Nicholas felt content knowing he was surrounded by love and friendship. Little did Nicholas know, this night would mark a turning point in his life, one that would set him on a path he never anticipated. For now, however, he was blissfully unaware of what lay ahead, content to revel in the happiness of the moment and the warmth of those around him. As Nicholas approached the kitchen, he could hear hushed voices and soft laughter filtering through the half-open door. He paused for a moment, thinking it was just a couple of guests stealing a private moment away from the party. But as he pushed the door open, the scene that greeted him made his blood run cold. There, amidst the clutter of used dishes and discarded napkins, stood his wife, Jane, locked in a passionate embrace with her younger coworker, Alex. The sight was surreal, as if time had slowed to a crawl. Nicholas's mind struggled to comprehend the betrayal unfolding before him. His heart pounded in his chest, the once familiar kitchen now a stage for an unimaginable nightmare. Jane and Alex, lost in their moment, were unaware of Nicholas's presence until his breath caught in his throat, a strangled sound that shattered the illusion of their privacy. They turned to face him, Jane's eyes widening in surprise, while Alex's expression shifted from shock to smug defiance. "What the hell is going on here?" Nicholas demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and anger. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing in as he waited for an explanation. Jane, recovering her composure, met his gaze with a cool, detached stare. "Nicholas, you weren't supposed to see this," she said, her voice devoid of any trace of guilt or shame. "But since you have, let's talk about it like adults." "Talk about what, Jane?" Nicholas replied, his voice rising in pitch. "Talk about how you're cheating on me in our own home, during my birthday party? Have you lost your mind?" Alex, leaning casually against the counter, chuckled softly. "Calm down, old man," he said, his tone laced with arrogance. "It's not like you can do anything about it." The words hung in the air, a taunt that cut deeper than any knife. Nicholas felt a white-hot rage bubbling up from within, a fury he had never experienced before. Years of trust, love, and devotion evaporated in an instant, replaced by a primal urge to reclaim his dignity. "You think this is funny?" Nicholas spat, stepping forward. "You think you can just waltz into my life and take what's mine without consequences?" Jane raised a hand to stop him, her voice firm. "Nicholas, listen to me. I deserve to be happy. Learn how to respect privacy of a wife who earns more than you. I've worked hard for everything I have and understand that things have changed. Now get the fuck out of here." Nicholas's heart shattered at her words, each syllable a dagger twisting deeper into the wound. Her justification was a slap in the face, an acknowledgement that their life together meant nothing to her now. Alex smirked, adding insult to injury. "Yeah, Nicholas. Face it, you're just not enough for her anymore. You can't do anything, you cuck." The room erupted in chaos as Nicola's restraint snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt exploded in a single moment of rage. He lunged at Alex, his fists flying in a blind fury. The younger man staggered back, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack. Jane screamed, trying to pull Nicholas away, but he was a force of nature, driven by the betrayal he had witnessed. The kitchen became a battleground, glasses shattering and furniture crashing to the floor as the struggle ensued. "Nicholas, stop it. You're going to hurt someone," Jane shouted, her voice frantic. But Nicholas was beyond hearing, beyond reason. It was only when Alex hit the floor, dazed and bloodied, that Nicholas paused, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked down at his hands, at the destruction he had wrought, and felt a sickening sense of satisfaction mixed with horror. Jane, shaken and pale, backed away from him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Nicholas, what have you done?" Nicholas slapped her across the face. In that moment, the reality of what had happened crashed over him like a tidal wave. The betrayal, the anger, and now the violence. It was all too much. Nicholas stumbled back, feeling the weight of his actions pressing down on him. As the sounds of the party continued in the background, oblivious to the chaos in the kitchen, Nicholas realized that everything he had known was crumbling around him. The night that had begun as a celebration had turned into a nightmare, and there was no turning back. The chaos in the kitchen spilled into the rest of the house, a wave of confusion and shock sweeping over the party. Guests turned their heads at the sound of breaking glass and raised voices, their laughter fading into anxious murmurs. The air was thick with tension as Nicholas stormed out of the kitchen, leaving behind the wreckage of the life he had known. "What's going on?" a voice called out, the question hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. Friends and family exchanged worried glances, unsure of how to react to the sudden disruption. Nicholas pushed his way through the crowd, his heart pounding in his chest, a mix of anger and humiliation burning in his veins. He needed to get out, to escape the prying eyes and whispered speculations. The front door slammed behind him as he stepped into the cool night air, his breath visible in the chilly evening. He walked aimlessly down the street, the distant sounds of the party fading into silence. Each step echoed with the betrayal he had just witnessed, his mind replaying the scene in the kitchen over and over. Jane and Alex, entwined in an embrace that shattered everything he thought he knew about his marriage. Inside the house, Jane tried to regain her composure, the shocked faces of their guests adding to her dismay. She knew she had to address the situation, to regain control before it spiraled further out of her grasp. She raised her voice, calling for attention. "Everyone, please," Jane began, forcing a smile that felt brittle and fragile. "I'm sorry for the disturbance. There was just a misunderstanding. Please, continue to enjoy the party." The explanation was thin, barely covering the truth, but it was enough to quell the immediate questions. The guests reluctantly turned back to their conversations, though the atmosphere was irrevocably altered. Jane felt the weight of their scrutiny, their judgment, pressing down on her. Alex, nursing a bruise and a wounded pride, slipped quietly away, not wanting to face the fallout of their actions. Jane watched him go, a mix of anger and regret simmering beneath her calm facade. As the evening wore on, the party gradually wound down, guests trickling out with awkward farewells and concerned glances. Jane knew she had to find Nicholas, to confront the storm that was brewing between them. She needed to face him, to assert her intentions before he could take the upper hand. She found him sitting on a park bench, the moon casting a pale glow over his hunched figure. Nicholas looked up as she approached, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Nicholas," Jane said softly, trying to gauge his mood, "we need to talk about what happened." Nicholas remained silent, his eyes fixed on a distant point beyond her. The silence stretched between them, a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. "You know this isn't working anymore," Jane continued, her voice gaining strength. "We've been drifting apart for years. Maybe it's time we face the truth and end this." "End this?" Nicholas repeated, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "You think that's the answer? You destroy everything we've built, and now you want to walk away?" Jane crossed her arms, defensive. "I'm being realistic, Nicholas. We both know we've been unhappy. I've worked hard for my career, for my independence. I won't let you drag me down." Nicholas stood, anger flaring anew. "Drag you down? I've supported you every step of the way, Jane. I was there for you when no one else was. And this is how you repay me?" "You don't understand," Jane snapped, frustration boiling over. "You never understood. I need more than what you can offer. I want a divorce, Nicholas, and I will take what I deserve. You won't get in my way." Her words were a punch to the gut, the finality of the statement leaving Nicholas breathless. He had always known Jane was ambitious, but he never imagined she would turn that ambition against him so ruthlessly. Jane turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night. Nicholas watched her go, feeling the weight of her threat settling heavily on his shoulders. He knew she was serious, that she would fight him for everything they had shared. Alone once more, Nicholas sat back down, his mind a storm of emotions. He thought back over the years, searching for the moment when everything had begun to unravel. How had Jane become someone he barely recognized? How had he missed the signs that their marriage was crumbling? As the night stretched on, Nicholas reflected on his life, questioning every decision, every sacrifice he had made for the sake of their relationship. He realized he had lost himself somewhere along the way, had given too much of himself to someone who no longer valued him. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with battles he never wanted to fight. But he also knew he couldn't let Jane's betrayal destroy him. He had to find a way to reclaim his life, to stand up for himself and face the future with strength. The party had ended, but the fallout was only beginning. Nicholas took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. He had survived 60 years of life's trials, and he would survive this too. The cold light of dawn filtered through the curtains as Nicholas sat at the kitchen table, his mind racing with thoughts of the night before. The betrayal he had witnessed still stung, but now, beneath the layers of hurt and disbelief, there was a steely resolve. He knew he couldn't let Jane take everything from him without a fight. He needed a plan, a way to protect himself from her threats and reclaim his life. The first step was to seek legal advice. Nicholas reached for his phone and dialed the number of an attorney recommended by a trusted colleague. He needed to understand his rights and the best course of action to take against Jane's threat of divorce. The conversation was enlightening, if not overwhelming. The attorney explained the nuances of marital property, the importance of documentation, and how evidence of Jane's infidelity could play a crucial role in the divorce proceedings. Armed with this knowledge, Nicholas knew he needed to gather evidence of Jane's betrayal. It was a difficult decision, but he realized that protecting himself required actions he never thought he would have to take. He began compiling a record of the events that had transpired, documenting everything from Jane's sudden late nights at work to the incident with Alex at the party. Despite the gravity of the situation, Nicholas found solace in the fact that he wasn't entirely alone. He needed someone he could trust, someone who could offer support and guidance through the tumultuous journey ahead. He thought of Amelia, a close friend from his college days. She was a no-nonsense woman with a keen sense of justice and a knack for strategy. If anyone could help him navigate the complexities of his crumbling marriage, it was Amelia. Nicholas met Amelia at their favorite coffee shop, a quiet place where they often caught up on each other's lives. As he explained the situation, Amelia listened intently, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Nicholas, you deserve better than this," she said, her voice firm. "You've been a good husband and a loyal partner. It's time to stand up for yourself and show Jane that you won't be pushed around." Amelia's words bolstered Nicholas's resolve. Together, they began to brainstorm ways to counter Jane's threats. Amelia suggested hiring a private investigator to gather more concrete evidence of Jane's infidelity, a move that could prove invaluable in the impending divorce. "Think of it as insurance," Amelia advised. "You need to be prepared for anything she throws your way. This isn't just about the money or the assets, it's about your dignity and your future." With Amelia's encouragement, Nicholas felt a renewed sense of purpose. He began to strategize, carefully planning his next moves within the marriage. He maintained a facade of normalcy around Jane, hiding his true intentions while subtly collecting information that could aid his case. Nicholas also took steps to secure his finances, quietly opening a separate bank account and transferring funds to protect himself from any sudden financial moves Jane might make. It was a precautionary measure, one that made him feel a small measure of control in a situation that often felt overwhelming. As the days passed, Nicholas found himself growing more adept at maneuvering within the strained confines of his marriage. He kept his interactions with Jane civil but distant, engaging in conversation only when necessary and never revealing his hand. It was a delicate balance, one that required constant vigilance and restraint. At the same time, Nicholas began to focus on his own well-being, something he had neglected for far too long. He started exercising regularly, finding solace in the rhythmic pounding of his feet on the pavement as he ran through the neighborhood. The physical exertion helped clear his mind, providing clarity and perspective on the challenges he faced. Nicholas also reconnected with old friends, people he had lost touch with over the years. Their support and encouragement reminded him of the person he used to be before the weight of his marriage had overshadowed everything else. They offered him a sense of community and belonging, helping him find strength in the face of adversity. With each passing day, Nicholas felt more prepared for the battle that lay ahead. He knew the path he had chosen was fraught with challenges and uncertainties, but he was determined to see it through. The betrayal had shaken him to his core, but it had also awakened a resilience he never knew he possessed. As he sat in his quiet home, Nicholas felt the weight of the future pressing down on him. The journey he was embarking on would be difficult, but it was one he had to take. He was fighting not just for himself, but for the life he had worked so hard to build. And in that fight, he found a renewed sense of purpose and strength. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of the party that had set this chain of events into motion. Everything was sterile and quiet, the air heavy with anticipation as the divorce proceedings began. Nicholas sat on one side of the room, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, bolstered by the knowledge that he had done everything possible to protect himself. Amelia sat beside him, her presence a reassuring anchor. Across the room, Jane exuded confidence, her demeanor cold and detached. She had always been adept at maintaining a veneer of control, and now she seemed ready to take what she believed was rightfully hers. She was represented by a formidable attorney, someone who had a reputation for winning even the most contentious cases. As the proceedings commenced, Jane's lawyer launched into a carefully crafted argument, painting her as the wronged party in a failing marriage. She was seeking a significant portion of their shared assets, citing her contribution to their lifestyle and her financial independence as justification. Nicholas listened, his heart pounding in his chest. This was the moment he had been dreading, the fear of losing everything he had worked for looming large. But he forced himself to stay calm, remembering the evidence he had gathered and the careful preparations he had made. When it was Nicholas's turn to speak, his lawyer rose to address the court. "Your Honor, we have evidence that will demonstrate not only the infidelity of Mrs. Carter, but also her misconduct at work. We believe this will significantly impact the court's view on the distribution of assets." The courtroom grew silent, all eyes turning to Jane, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Nicholas's lawyer presented the evidence methodically, displaying photographs and documents that painted a clear picture of her betrayal. The private investigator's reports were thorough, detailing her affair with Alex and documenting her questionable activities at work, activities that violated company policies and ethical standards. Emails and text messages were read aloud, each one chipping away at the carefully constructed facade Jane had maintained. The atmosphere in the room shifted as the weight of the revelations settled over everyone present. Jane's attorney attempted to object, but the damage was already done. The judge's gaze turned toward Jane, assessing the truth of what had been presented. "Mrs. Carter, these are serious allegations. Do you have any response?" the judge asked, his voice firm. Jane hesitated, the confident mask slipping for the first time. She looked to her attorney for guidance, but even he seemed at a loss for words. She shifted in her seat, her expression one of indignation mixed with desperation. "Your Honor, my personal life should not impact the division of assets," Jane argued, trying to regain her composure. "I have worked hard for everything I have." "Perhaps, Mrs. Carter," the judge replied, "but the court must consider all aspects of the case, including character and conduct." As the proceedings continued, Nicholas could sense the tide turning in his favor. He listened as witnesses were called to testify, each one corroborating the evidence against Jane. Colleagues spoke of her erratic behavior at work, while friends admitted to having witnessed her infidelity firsthand. Finally, the judge called a recess to deliberate. Nicholas sat in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. He knew that whatever the outcome, this battle had already changed him in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. When the judge returned, the air in the courtroom was electric with tension. Nicholas held his breath, waiting for the verdict that would determine the course of his future. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, "This court finds in favor of Mr. Carter," the judge announced, his voice steady and impartial. "Mrs. Carter's conduct has been deemed detrimental, and the division of assets will reflect that. Mr. Carter will retain the majority of shared assets, and no spousal support will be awarded." A sense of relief washed over Nicholas, the victory a balm to the months of uncertainty and fear. He felt Amelia's hand squeeze his arm in support, her eyes shining with pride. As Jane sat in stunned silence, the reality of her situation sinking in, Nicholas felt a pang of sympathy. Despite everything, he had loved her once, and the end of their marriage was a bittersweet conclusion to a shared history. Outside the courthouse, the sun shone brightly, a stark contrast to the emotional storm they had weathered inside. Nicholas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. He had won the battle, not out of spite or vengeance, but to protect the life he had worked so hard to build. He knew the road ahead would still be challenging, filled with the echoes of what had transpired. But he was ready to face it, bolstered by the knowledge that he had emerged from the ordeal stronger and more resilient. As he and Amelia walked away from the courthouse, Nicholas allowed himself a small smile. It was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and rediscover who he was. And in that moment, he felt a profound sense of triumph, knowing he had taken back control of his life and future. In the weeks following the courtroom showdown, the ripples of consequence spread swiftly through Jane's life. The evidence of her misconduct at work and her public affair with Alex had dealt a severe blow to her reputation. The corporate world, once the stage of her ambitions and triumphs, turned its back on her. The company where she had climbed the ranks, where she had poured so much of her energy and identity, could no longer afford to keep her on board amidst the scandal. Her dismissal was abrupt and humiliating, a swift end to a career she had believed was unassailable. Alex, who had basked in Jane's success and used her professional standing as a springboard for his ambitions, found himself similarly adrift. With Jane's fall from grace, the connections and opportunities he had taken for granted vanished overnight. Colleagues who had once entertained his overtures now avoided him, wary of being tainted by association with the disgraced pair. His position, tenuous at best, crumbled without Jane's influence to shield him. The stark reality of their situation hit Jane and Alex hard. Once accustomed to the privileges and comforts their respective careers had provided, they now faced the daunting prospect of starting over from nothing. Without the means to support their former lifestyle, and with their professional reputations in tatters, they found themselves on the edge of financial ruin. The affair that had seemed so thrilling and liberating had instead become their undoing, a cautionary tale of hubris and betrayal. For Nicholas, the aftermath of the court victory was a period of profound transformation. The legal battle had been grueling, but its resolution brought a sense of liberation he had not anticipated. The oppressive weight of his marriage and the betrayal that had followed was lifted, allowing him to embrace his newfound freedom. For the first time in years, Nicholas was free to make decisions based solely on his desires and needs, without the shadow of Jane's ambitions hanging over him. He took up new hobbies and rekindled old passions, diving back into photography and reconnecting with the world through his lens. Each click of the shutter captured not just an image, but a moment of personal rediscovery and joy. He traveled to places he had long dreamed of visiting, each journey a testament to his ability to carve out a life of his own choosing. Nicholas also found solace in the companionship of friends and family who had stood by him throughout the ordeal. Their support had been a lifeline, offering both encouragement and a reminder of the value of genuine connections. Among them, Amelia had been a constant presence, her friendship unwavering and true. With her, he found not just camaraderie, but an understanding that went beyond words, a bond forged in shared trials and mutual respect. As Nicholas reflected on the tumultuous journey, he acknowledged the pain and heartache he had endured. The betrayal, the divorce, and the battle for his dignity had been a crucible, testing the limits of his resilience. Yet from that ordeal emerged a deeper appreciation for the strength he had discovered within himself, and for the clarity it brought to what truly mattered in life. He recognized the lessons learned from his marriage, understanding that while it had ended in bitterness, it had also offered moments of genuine happiness and growth. He held on to those memories, not with regret, but with the understanding that they were part of his journey towards self-discovery. In embracing his new beginning, Nicholas found a peace he had never anticipated, a quiet contentment that came from knowing he was finally living life on his own terms. He stood at the threshold of this new chapter, ready to face the future with open eyes and an open heart, grateful for the lessons of the past and eager to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead.